Wars are won by soldiers, but they're started by bankers. And they're financed by families who've discovered that human conflict is the most profitable business model ever invented. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is accounting. This is 220 years of documented profit margins written in blood and filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission. This is the story of 5 families and corporations who have mastered the art of turning young men's deaths into quarterly earnings reports. Rockefeller, Morgan, Lockheed Martin, Halliburton. These aren't just companies, they're dynasties built on a simple business model. Create the conditions for war, supply both sides when possible, and invoice the government at cost-plus pricing so that waste becomes profit and failure becomes reward. They've influenced every American military engagement for over 2 centuries. They've lobbied for conflicts. They've sabotaged peace. They've traded with enemies during wartime and called it commerce. And when investigations threatened, they've bought politicians, buried evidence, and continued operations without missing a dividend payment. The names on their boards have changed. The products evolved from gunpowder to guided missiles to private military logistics. But the pattern remains identical. Privatize the profits, socialize the deaths, and make sure the contracts are signed before the first shot is fired. This is the military-industrial complex, not as Eisenhower warned about it, but as it actually operates. 5 families, trillions in profits, millions of dead, and not a single executive in prison. Welcome to the business of war, where patriotism is marketing and casualties are externalities. Let's start with the oldest player in the game, DuPont, the powder men, the family that supplied explosives to every American war since 1802. The DuPont family didn't just profit from war. They engineered their entire business model around it. During the Civil War, they supplied gunpowder to the Union Army while privately sympathizing with the Confederacy. Perfect business strategy. No matter who won, DuPont got paid. Dead Northerners or dead Southerners, the invoices went through either way. DuPont. But the real money came during World War I. In 1914, when the war started, DuPont's annual profits were modest. By 1918, when the war ended, their profits had increased by 1,600%. Not 160%. 1,600%. How do you increase profits by that magnitude in 4 years? Easy. Sell explosives to a government desperate enough to pay any price. Charge premium rates for powder that kills millions. And make sure production never quite meets demand, so prices stay inflated. Every shell fired, every trench bombardment, every artillery barrage that shredded human beings into paste, DuPont got a cut. They invoiced the government for the powder that created widows and orphans. They collected payment while Gold Star mothers buried their sons. And they called it patriotism, supporting the troops, serving the nation. The marketing was brilliant. The reality was a family business built on industrialized death. Now consider Rockefeller, Standard Oil, the company that became Exxon, the oil dynasty that powered American industry and, inconveniently, also powered Nazi Germany. During World War II, while American soldiers were dying in Europe fighting fascism, Standard Oil was conducting business with I.G. Farben, the German chemical conglomerate that manufactured Zyklon B gas for Nazi death camps. They shared patents. They coordinated production. They maintained business relationships through neutral countries. This wasn't a secret. Senator Harry Truman, before he became president, investigated Standard Oil's activities and called it treason. Not metaphorical treason. Actual, constitutional, giving aid and comfort to the enemy treason. Standard Oil was supplying fuel and technical expertise to the regime that was exterminating Jews and killing American servicemen. While their advertisements at home showed patriotic support for our troops, their international subsidiaries were making sure the Wehrmacht had enough petroleum to keep rolling. The punishment for this treason? Nothing. 0 prosecutions, no executives jailed, no assets seized, because the U.S. military needed Standard Oil's refining capacity, needed their distribution networks, needed their technical expertise. So the government made a calculation. We can't afford to punish them because we need them to win. And Standard Oil knew this. They knew they were too essential to prosecute. So they continued operations, collected profits from both sides of the war, and emerged from 1945 richer and more powerful than ever. Profit over patriotism. Always. Because flags don't pay dividends. Dead soldiers do, if you're selling the weapons that kill them and the fuel that burns their bodies. But the most influential player in the war profit game isn't a manufacturer. It's a bank, J.P. Morgan, the financial institution that didn't just profit from war, but actively pushed America into one. 1914. World War I begins in Europe. America is neutral. President Wilson promises to keep American boys out of European conflicts. The public overwhelmingly opposes intervention. Everything points to America staying out. Except for one problem, J.P. Morgan has loaned massive amounts of money to Britain and France. By 1917, Morgan's exposure to Allied debt exceeds $2 billion in 1917 dollars. Adjust for inflation, and you're looking at over $50 billion in modern terms. Here's the calculation Morgan faced. If the Allies lose, those loans default. If those loans default, JP Morgan collapses. If JP Morgan collapses, it takes a significant portion of the American banking system down with it. So Morgan had a vested interest in Allied victory that had nothing to do with democracy, freedom, or making the world safe for anything except Morgan's balance sheet. The firm lobbied. They influenced media coverage. They financed pro-war propaganda. They leveraged every connection in Washington. And in 1917, America entered the war, saved the Allies, saved Morgan's loans, cost 116,000 American lives. This is the part they don't teach in high school history. The noble rhetoric about democracy was cover for a bailout. We sent young men to die in French trenches to make sure a New York bank didn't have to write down bad debt. Morgan collected every penny owed. The soldiers who made that collection possible collected wooden crosses. And the pattern was established. Private institutions can leverage government military power to protect private financial interests. Just wrap it in a flag and call it patriotism. This model worked so well that it became standard operating procedure for the next century. Fast forward to the modern era, the weapons got more sophisticated, the profit margins got larger, and the corporations learned that the real money isn't in making good weapons. It's in making weapons programs too big to cancel. Enter Lockheed Martin, the defense contractor that mastered the art of political hostage-taking through strategic job distribution. The F-35 Joint Strike Fighter program is the perfect example. This aircraft was supposed to cost $200 billion total. Current projected cost, $1.7 trillion over budget by a factor of 8, plagued by technical failures, years behind schedule. By any rational measure, a catastrophic disaster. So why hasn't it been canceled? Because Lockheed was smart. They didn't build the F-35 in one location. They spread production across 45 different states, parts manufactured in nearly every congressional district in America. This is strategic. When a senator or representative considers voting against the F-35 budget, Lockheed can credibly threaten to close the facility in their district. Those are jobs. Those are voters. Those are campaign donors. Vote against the program, and you vote against your own constituents' employment. It's political extortion masquerading as economic development. And it works perfectly. Congress keeps funding a broken program because voting against it is political suicide. Lockheed keeps collecting payments for an aircraft that may never function as promised. Taxpayers keep funding the overruns. The worse the program performs, the more money Lockheed requests to fix it. Failure is rewarded with additional contracts. Success would mean the program ends and payments stop. So there's a perverse incentive to keep problems going indefinitely. This is the evolution of war profiteering. You don't need to start wars anymore. You just need to make weapons programs politically immune to cancellation. Then milk them forever. But Lockheed's political manipulation pales compared to Halliburton's approach. Put your former CEO in charge of the government and watch the contracts flow. Dick Cheney was Halliburton's CEO from 1995 to 2000. He left to become vice president in 2001. During his tenure as VP, Halliburton's government contracts increased by over 400%. Coincidence? Let's examine the evidence. Before the Iraq War, Halliburton's subsidiary KBR had modest Pentagon contracts. After the war started, a war Cheney heavily promoted and helped justify with false intelligence about weapons of mass destruction, Halliburton received no-bid contracts worth billions. The most egregious example, cost-plus logistics contracts. Here's how this scam works. The government agrees to pay all costs plus a guaranteed profit percentage. So if Halliburton spends $100 million on a project, they get $100 million plus, say, 10% profit. Spend $200 million, get $200 million plus 10%. See the incentive? The more you spend, the more you profit. Efficiency is punished, waste is rewarded. And there's no penalty for fraud because costs are just passed through to the government. Investigations found Halliburton charging $45 per case of soda, billing for meals never served to troops, constructing facilities that were never used. The more they wasted, the higher their guaranteed profit. They literally made money by incompetence and fraud. Troops in Iraq didn't get the supplies they needed, but Halliburton shareholders got record dividends. And Dick Cheney, who'd left with a $34 million severance package, still owned Halliburton stock options while serving as vice president. He promoted a war. His former company profited enormously from that war. He personally financially benefited from those profits. And he faced zero consequences because the system is designed to protect this behavior. Which brings us to the question, why hasn't anyone gone to prison? With this much documented fraud, this much clear conflict of interest, this much obvious profiteering, why are all these dynasties still operating? The answer is the revolving door, the incestuous relationship between defense contractors, Pentagon officials, and politicians that makes prosecution impossible. Defense contractors hire former Pentagon officials at massive salaries. Pentagon officials know that if they're friendly to contractors while in government, they'll get lucrative jobs after. Politicians receive campaign donations from defense companies and know that voting against military budgets means those donations stop. Everyone is compromised. Everyone benefits. And anyone who tries to blow the whistle gets crushed by the combined weight of corporate legal teams and government classification powers. When investigations do happen, they get buried in bureaucracy, classified for national security, settled quietly, covered by legal immunity clauses in the contracts. The system has antibodies against accountability. DuPont never faced consequences for war profiteering. Rockefeller never faced treason charges. Morgan never admitted to manipulating America into war. Lockheed keeps getting funded despite failure. Halliburton executives never saw a courtroom. The pattern is clear. Defense profiteering is onto crime when the profits are large enough to buy immunity. When you're too big to fail because the government depends on your production capacity, you're too big to prosecute. So the dynasties continue. The families pass wealth to the next generation. The corporate boards refresh with new names, but same strategies. And every conflict, every military engagement, every overseas intervention becomes an opportunity to extract wealth from public coffers. The soldiers fight and die. The taxpayers fund it. And 5 families and their corporations collect the dividends forever. So here's what I want you to do next time you see news of a military conflict. Next time politicians debate intervention. Next time defense budgets get proposed. Don't ask if it's necessary. Ask who profits. Don't ask if we should protect democracy. Ask which companies get the contracts. Don't accept patriotic rhetoric without following the money. Because wars are complex, but war profits are simple. Someone is always getting rich. And it's never the soldiers. It's never the taxpayers. It's never the dead. It's DuPont selling the powder, Rockefeller selling the fuel, Morgan financing the debt, Lockheed building the planes, Halliburton providing the logistics. Always the same pattern. Always the same families. Always the same blood dividends. They've built generational wealth on generational warfare. They've constructed empires on corpse piles. They've funded trust funds with blood money. And they've done it so successfully for so long that it's become invisible, normal, just business. But it's not just business. It's murder for profit. It's death as a revenue stream. It's turning human tragedy into quarterly earnings and calling it patriotism. The war dynasties don't want peace. Peace is bankruptcy. Stability is revenue loss. Diplomacy is a threat to margins. So they lobby for tension. They manufacture threats. They ensure that somewhere, always, there's a conflict that requires their products. And you're paying for it. Every tax dollar, every dead soldier, every family destroyed by war. You're funding their yachts, their estates, their charitable foundations that whitewash blood money into respectable philanthropy. This is the military-industrial complex, not as a theory, but as a documented, proven, unbroken pattern of profit extraction through organized violence. For 220 years and counting, the question isn't whether this is happening. The evidence is overwhelming. The question is what you're going to do about it now that you know. This is finance through time. We follow the money so you can see who's really winning the wars. Now I want to hear from you. When politicians talk about patriotic duty and defending freedom, are they talking about national security or corporate profits? Is military service truly about the flag? Or is it about enriching dynasties that treat soldiers as product delivery systems? Drop your answer in the comments, patriotism or profit.